Hello, and welcome to Optimized, a marketing performance podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm Janet Rosseth, your host, and a 25-year veteran of multifamily marketing. This podcast is going to challenge you to reach 1% better somewhere in your daily life, and optimizing is how we'll do that together. Whether it's bringing your personal best to your work and life, building efficient work processes, uncovering new trends, or making sense of meaningful data, we'll dig in together and find that 1%. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Optimized, a marketing performance podcast. I'm your host, Janet Rosseth. And here we are, another session, another conversation, working to bring you just a little bit closer to better performance, whether it's in marketing, in operations, somewhere in the multifamily realm. Today, I'm really hoping to chat a little bit more about self-improvement in performance and specifically the mindset of career path and career journey. With so many people that seem to be either job hunting right now or in transition, we've got a lot of college students that are graduating and hitting the industry or hitting the market. Seems like a really good time to have a conversation around career planning, maybe busting some myths about what the right choices are, encouraging lifelong learning, marketing yourself beyond just this theme of personal branding and LinkedIn's algorithms. And I can't think of a better person to have that conversation with than my guest, Steve Matre. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Janet. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to have you here.
It is
You
great
and I
to.
have
Thanks for
known
the
each
invite.
other forever. We date back to some very early conferences in the industry, and we've followed each other's career paths for a long time, supported each other from afar. And it feels like the perfect conversation for you and I to have on this podcast. So welcome.
Definitely. Well, thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been in the multifamily industry for, I want to say, as long as I have, 25
I
plus
can
years.
say it. It's been 35 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I stopped counting at 25. I don't even know where it is now. But you've really led everything from marketing to ops to training and development. And because of that, I think you've touched a lot of people's career paths over their life, and makes you really credible to have this conversation from both your personal journey and the journey of the people that you have led in your career. So take a minute, tell us about your career path, a little bit about yourself so listeners can get to know you a little bit.
Tell the personal side first. So I have been in the industry for 35 years, and I was lucky enough to start in accounting. So I'm a recovering CPA.
Love it.
I spent the first 6 years of my career in accounting. And that was wonderful. It was actually, my first job was at a small advertising agency. I absolutely loved it, but there was zero opportunity. So I started a job search pretty quickly. Um, and I landed at Benjamin Sherman and Sons, which I'm proud to say I was there when they celebrated their 75th anniversary, and they are still thriving and in business as Sherman Residential. And they just celebrated their 100th anniversary back in 2022. So that was
Very
really
cool.
exciting that they were a great group of people. So I was assistant controller for them until I was about 27 years old, and they were kind enough to offer me the opportunity to jump over into operations and oversee the multifamily portfolio. So this goes all the way back to 1997. And the industry was completely different. You did everything on the road with your people. You had to walk the property, look at capital, sign contracts, look at ads, communicate with each of your people. It was just such a traveling job, but it was a great time to start in the industry. It was the rise of customer service, a little bit of technology, but of course, nothing like it is today. I was at Sherman for 12 years. I loved it there. But then I bounced over to Banner Properties in Chicago, and I spent the next 17 years at Banner. So I was in operations for 3. And then we went through succession planning, and the CEO who came aboard, who was a really great guy, I was his main touch point for his onboarding. And after about the first 6 months, he said, you are a storyteller. I would love to have kind of an official training department. And after about 3 years, I had been at the company 3.5 years. He set me loose, and I said, yes, I'll do it. I needed 30 days to put together my proposal, and I was very excited. So then I spent probably about, I want to get this right, 12 years as training, marketing, and revenue management. I was our first revenue manager. So it was all about change and technology. All we did was roll out technological initiatives. And then they also asked me at the end of my tenure there for about my final 5 years to also head HR, which a lot of people think is kind of that strange change. But I said, yes, I'll do it. And I'm actually really glad I did. And then in 2020, I was a pandemic change. So during June of 2020, I went up to Milwaukee and I went over to Mandel Group, which is a Midwestern manager and developer. Really wonderful company. I learned so much there. They were also going through succession planning. So it was like a 2.5 year sprint to do nothing but build different initiatives on the support side. I was VP of operations support. And then I got an opportunity to be senior vice president of operations for Redwood Residential. So I came back to Chicago and I was most recently at Redwood for a year and a half, which brings me to now. So I'm actually a free agent right now. I'm in transition, not entirely within my control, but it was really good timing. So I've been really intentional about the way I've been spending the last 6 months. But then on the personal side, I'm all about college football, good coffee. I'm a podcast addict. So, and a runner, walker. So, yeah, that's me.
Love
That's
it.
me in a nutshell. Long story.
Oh, that just makes me think of so many questions that I want to ask you in terms of the times in your career path where you've been the one to instigate the change and the times where someone else has been the one to instigate the change. Because it
Yeah,
really reminded me too in my own career path, there were times where I don't think I would have taken big steps if somebody else wouldn't have seen the possibility and the potential in me that I didn't see.
same.
And I'm very grateful
Agree.
for that, but it came with a little bit of fear. Tell us a few of those moments in your career and where those have led you.
Yeah, I think that I would call my career path sort of very unmapped and random. But when I look back on it, it sort of makes perfect sense. When you're property management is such a diverse industry. So I'll just take a community manager as an example. Every property manager is a mini CEO. And one of the challenges so it's a challenge of property management, but it's also everybody's favorite thing. You really have to know a little bit of everything. You have to know maintenance, marketing, sales. You have to do performance reviews, do budgets. And so if you're a really good community manager, boy, you have developed a huge set of skills. So I started from a completely different place. The accounting to property management feels sort of random, but there's a weird side of me. I don't always love the word curious. I'm more like a bookworm. Like I'm always reading something, I'm always ingesting information. So when they asked me to take on the property management role out of accounting, I spent the first 6 months doing nothing but reading, networking. And so I'm old. You may remember, not everyone listening is going to remember Yahoo groups. Do you remember Yahoo groups?
Just barely.
So I think I have to name a name. I have because this one was a pioneer. I have to call out Lisa Trozine. Lisa Trozine started Yahoo groups for multifamily. It was great timing for me because she would pose these questions and everybody would answer the questions. And I was going through that intro to property management. So I was literally learning in real time, doing this job, but also learning in real time. But I'm also a writer, speaker, contributor kind of person too.
Hmm.
So I could start answering all these questions. And I think my answers were always too long and involved. But by the time I started going out to conferences, people were like, wait, you're Steve. You're the one who answers every question on Yahoo Group. So thanks to Lisa, I had my first exposure to conferences and such. And I started getting invitations to speak, which is another thing. Like I just accepted them. I had never done any public speaking. And I just was like, okay, I'll do that. So it's always been this thing like, do you want to be in property management? Sure. Do you want to speak at this conference? Okay. Do you want to start a training department? Okay. Do you want to move over to HR? Well, all right. I kept
Yeah.
saying yes to these things that I didn't really know that I was qualified for. But I guess I was either confident or stupid enough to think that I could do it. And
If someone else has faith in you to be able to do it, it brings a different level
yes.
of um, enthusiasm for you to try it.
Yeah, right.
I have a piece
Yeah.
of advice when people ask me what advice I would give my earlier self in my career. One of the biggest pieces of advice is allow yourself to be led.
That's a
because
great,
I think I
thought.
resisted things a little bit sometimes because I didn't feel like that was the right path for me. And when I didn't resist it, it opened doors that I never would have opened on my own.
Yeah. For me, it was all about, it's strange to say, but it was kind of like fear. I just didn't want to say no because I was afraid that these companies that they said, would you do this? And I said no. I was afraid that they would say exit stage left. I mean, I didn't really feel like at the time, but I think that's just another a personality trait. Maybe I don't know that I saw the other options, but
Yeah.
then when you put it all together, though, it's like, boy, I've developed a really wide perspective. Any decision or opportunity or challenge that comes along, I've got all these areas of perspective to apply to the decision. So it's made me a pretty well rounded generalist, I think is probably the right word.
Right. I mean, you really come in as the team player, like, I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do.
Yeah,
But sometimes we look back on those moves too and think, like, "Oh, okay, I tried that, but I didn't actually get a whole lot of joy out of that. Maybe a different direction." But take us through just what you feel are some of the myths in trying to define what is the right career path? What are the right choices and at what points should you take risks? And I don't know that there is a right answer, but I'm
there's
curious from
not.
your perspective, having led a lot of people through that talent development from the HR perspective and the training and development perspective, what advice do you give people on plotting out your career path?
Two things come to mind. First is instinct, and I want to talk about my niece because I she's so impressive. And the second is, trying finding unexpected benefits. So the unexpected benefit piece is, I would say the human resources decision was something that everybody questions. When I talk to people now, they either say, "Oh, that was a great move," or they give me like a very weird look, like, "Why did you do that?" But I think this is the unexpected thing. I think a lot of people think of HR as very administrative, and it is. However, I never really realized the legal piece of HR and the performance management. So, and I found that after I took that job, I was in HR for Banner for about 7 years. And I was able to partner really nicely with operations because I had also done operations and training. And so a lot of HR people get faulted for wanting just more and more documentation. But I think that I was always very comfortable in the gray area. And
Right.
when
You
people
understood
came
all
to
the
me and said,
roles.
like, for example, I want to discipline someone again, I'm like, no, I don't think so. We've invested a lot of time in this person. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, it might be time to make a change because this person's probably going to thrive somewhere else. And I think people really appreciated me for that because I was able to make a final decision. And I will say that HR professionals now are some of my favorite people to mentor and teach because there are a lot of HR people who are extremely black and white. And I'm like, no, you just need to find comfort in the gray. The unexpected benefit is figuring out that there's an aversion to HR. Sometimes people fear them, but that's the person you want around the table because if you give them challenges like improve talent management, improve recruiting, and work on culture within the company, if that person knows you have faith in them, they will make a massive impact in making the company better. It doesn't always have to come from operations. HR people can be extremely valuable. I will always advocate for them. And then the other piece, like there's an intuition piece. And I want to talk about my niece. She was a pandemic graduate from college and she
Challenging.
went to a very big Fortune 500 company, but there was no one in the office. There was no one in the office, and she knew that she just wouldn't learn what she needed to do, and she would never get that organic sort of like we call it the water cooler, but I don't know if water coolers still exist.
I
So
still call it that.
yeah, you wander into the kitchen and you're going to grab a cup of coffee and you have those organic conversations. And she happens to be in finance. So she might see someone in marketing and say, oh, hey, can you help me with PowerPoint or can I run over your desk and talk about making this presentation? So the only other person in the office with her during the pandemic, as she kept coming in, was the CFO. So here she was, this
Nice.
entry level finance person forming a relationship with their CFO, who left and recruited her over to the next position. And now she is like a senior associate in investor relations for another Fortune 500 company that just went through an IPO.
Wow.
Um, and she's this supercharged young lady who just gets it. She knows. She's like, I need to be in the office. I need to develop these relationships. And I feel bad for a lot of, I have really mixed feelings on everybody forcing people back to the office. But I
Yeah,
do know that there's true value in being in an office with people because
I agree.
that's where all the learning happens.
I agree. I'll share this here too.
Yeah.
It somewhat breaks my heart, but inspires me at the same time that we have this incredibly talented intern who's been working with us for the last year, and she's graduating in May. And while I would love to keep her on the team here, we're entirely remote.
Yeah.
And I know the value of being in an office, especially in this industry, and hearing the conversations that happen in other departments and the other ends of the business and learning all of that. It makes you so much more well rounded. And when you're
Yeah.
remote, you just don't get that as much.
And
So
there's
I,
nothing wrong with being 100% remote. I think you're
yeah,
just an example of, boy, you're so 2025, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
there's a lot of companies where people are very spread out, and property management tends to be very spread out geographically. It just
yeah,
means you have to work a little bit harder on the engagement piece. You have to
yep,
create those opportunities and be super intentional about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So go back to the myths in the industry of, or just myths in general in career growth. We might have people listening that aren't in the industry, but you look back on generations before you and I, and it was all about loyalty. You spend your entire lifetime at the
Yeah.
same company.
Yes.
And now you look at some of the different generations that are not afraid to hop every couple of years and bite off a position that we look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, you're not ready for that. You haven't even spent a whole year in this role yet. And they jump and grow and jump and grow. But what's the right advice? Everybody's a little bit different. How do you give people advice on when to take a risk and when to stay put?
I think that my parents, I hit the parents jackpot. They are both gone now, but my dad was very successful in business. But he's the traditionalist generation, so I don't want to get this wrong. I think he would be 98 if he was still alive. So, but my dad always gave me the advice. He wanted me to be. He was always nervous that I was not at a big company, and he was
Hmm.
always nervous. But he was very sage. So his advice always was, well, just listen. If you make a job change, be ready to make another one. And I'm like, that's so smart because you don't know if you're going to be you don't know if
Yeah.
you're going to be a big hit at any company that you go to. You just don't know.
Yep.
But he was that person. He was at his company for 38 years. He went from an entry level associate to like a senior VP in international relations. He worked for a pretty sizable insurance company. But he's like the story that just doesn't happen anymore. He wanted me to get with a big company, get a pension. And I'm like, Dad, it just doesn't work that way anymore. We
Yeah.
make our own pension. So the myths piece, and it's not so much a myth anymore. I just think it's the changing nature of the world. And you use the word loyalty. And from the very beginning, I don't know that I would say I don't really like the word loyal as it relates to work because work is very transactional. You should
Hmm.
absolutely give your all and give your best to your company. But the other side of that is that money is going to, magically appear in your checking account every other Friday. So your company is giving compensation back to you. They're giving real world experience. So I would say that first myth is like, I don't know that you should, I don't know that it means anything anymore if you stay with a company for a certain number of years. And I really do feel that I'm also a little bit of a political junkie and and an amateur sociologist. So I know that people are staying in the working world longer now because things are expensive.
Hmm.
Some people are reluctant to retire, and there's not a lot of people clearing the way for the younger set. So the only way for a lot of younger folks to get experience is to leave and go somewhere else.
Yep.
So, the myth of loyalty, the myth of being at a company forever, there is absolutely nothing wrong with staying. I mean, I did it 12
Hmm.
years, 17 years. But those first two companies, I was very lucky that the opportunities existed for me.
Yeah. You had a lot of opportunities to grow within those companies.
I had opportunities to grow. I had people who advocated for me. But I also then went to Mandel and spent a little under 3 years. And then at Redwood, it was 19 months. So
Yep.
I don't read much into that because I was able to do a lot for those companies as well. It just
Huh.
didn't work out that there was just a really long tenure for me at those companies. So
Yeah.
I would say the long tenure piece is a little bit of a myth now.
I think we've also outgrown the expectation that because you're in a certain position and you've been there for so long, you're the next in line to be promoted to the next level. I think
Correct.
that's long out the window that,
Yeah.
I'll share another one of my favorite sayings to people like, don't wait for your ship to come in, swim out to it.
So
Ships don't
I
come
like
into
that.
shore.
Yes. Sometimes you
The
have to
dinghy
make your
comes
own
to
road.
shore. Ships don't come to shore. Like, you got to be ready to swim a little for it
Yeah.
and to watch when your opportunity might exist or might be present and take a chance.
Sometimes you have to make your own opportunities. You build your
Hmm.
own career path, and it's a lot, like I said, with intuition. You have to know ready. I really caution people. We see it in our industry all the time. Someone comes aboard and within 3 months, they're saying, well, I've closed 30% of my leases. I want to be a regional manager. It's like, no, I'm sorry. It really doesn't work that way. I really encourage people to be a little bit patient. And I'm a big believer in putting education and theory behind the real world experience. So even though I'm saying that I have nothing really against the word loyalty, I just think work is very transactional. But the forever person, you know, I think that you want to get into a job, you want to master that job, but you want to confirm with somebody else at the company, your supervisor, your trainers, you need to confirm with them that you actually have mastered. You want to make sure that they think you've mastered your position. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to be a little bit patient because what your next employers are looking for achievements today. They don't just want a resume that says, well, I monitored my closing ratio. It's like, no, they want to know what's your conversion rate. They want to know how you generated traffic. How did you retain those people? And they want a period of time. So I always encourage people to not only be patient, be at a job long enough so that you actually have some achievements to talk about
Mhm.
and put on your resume because that's what people are looking for. But at the same time, get some theory behind that real world experience. Go get a designation. Join the American Marketing Association, join your local apartment association, get a digital marketing credential from the AMA, get the NALP from the NAA, get some classes, on your resume, some designations so people know it's like, wow,
Right.
this person not only is getting real world experience from their company, but they're going out and learning the theory behind what they're doing.
I
And that
love
takes a
that you
little
just
while. So
brought that
2
up,
years,
Steve,
3 years,
because I love that you just brought that up because I think it's also sometimes an expectation that your company is going to guide you down that training path.
not all
That
the
your company
time.
is going to put those opportunities in front of you and say, hey, here, I'll pay for this. You go get it. There are a lot of places that you can gain education and training
Yes,
without spending money and you can
correct.
seek it out on your own. But there are also a lot of places that you can invest in yourself and in your own growth capabilities, just like extending a college degree or extending certifications. It doesn't always have to be paid for by your company.
My favorite one is LinkedIn Learning. I
Yes.
mean, if you go premium, talk about going out of pocket. Not every company has a tuition reimbursement program. Some companies just can't afford it,
Hmm.
um, or they just choose not to do it. But LinkedIn, if you go premium on LinkedIn for a few months, I think it might be, I'm going to get this wrong, it may be $500 for 6 months. But you have access to LinkedIn Learning, which literally has thousands of classes and learning tracks in everything that you would ever want to do. And I just did I did like a 10-hour learning track on artificial intelligence.
I bet
And
it
I'm
was
so happy I did
fascinating.
it. I had to take a test. I had to take notes. I had to learn my stuff. But I learned like, what does GPT mean? Well, now I know what it means. What's a GAN? How does the fraud protection software in our industry work? I get it now. So just doing like this learning track on LinkedIn allowed me to look under the hood. And
Yeah.
that's AI is just one example. You can do time management, communication,
Right.
strategy, finance. And so I feel like that's the LinkedIn learning thing for me is like the perfect example of it's all there just for the taking.
Right.
But you may have to put up $500 of your own money.
Yep.
You got to invest a little bit in
It's an
yourself.
investment in yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, we would be remiss not to talk about there's a couple types of employee personalities. One is the one that wants to just get in the seat and just come and do their job every day. And
Yeah.
if you want to promote me, great. If you don't, great. But the curious, motivated, um, challenger of like, I want to get in here, I want to grow, I want to get up this ladder as fast as I can. Or to quote Katie Rice, who was just on a podcast with me, she called it the lattice instead of the ladder, which I love because you can go in all
That
different
too. Yeah.
directions. Um, but I think there's really something to be said also about choosing wisely when you're seeking that next position to find a company that wants you to grow, that wants to invest in you, that's looking
Mhm.
for talents in you like curiosity or, strong decision making or just, interest in growing and is willing to invest in you. Because if you're a curious, motivated person that wants to grow and you get yourself in a position with a company that doesn't really invest in ongoing education, you're
Right.
probably in a little bit of a misfit there.
Yeah, absolutely. I like talking about this a lot because I think there's a lot of people who think that their company is going to be the sole provider of training and education and development. And that's really not the case. Training and development is a department of a company, but it's not solely why they exist.
Yep.
Property management companies exist to serve their residents and even more so to increase wealth for their investors. That's kind of the thing that no one really talks about. It's all about creating value for the investors so that they continue to give that company more money to expand. But it's always in the best interest of a company to create a very positive and enriching employee experience. What that looks like is really different for every employee. So, you brought up a lot of things in what you just said. I always feel bad. I always feel bad for the person who does their job search really quickly, and I absolutely understand if you feel the need to leave for $2 more an hour, if that fits the need right now, the immediate need for you, that's fine. But I always encourage people to be very intentional. Don't leave a company until you've gotten everything out of them that you can. And by that, I mean, make sure that you have mastered your position, gotten some good achievements on paper, but you just said the word intentional in your job search. Put your resume out there, make it a really good resume. Have some really good interviews and make sure that you really gel with the people that are hiring you. Because boy, there's no worse feeling than
Right.
getting what you think is your dream job. And by the end of the first week, it's like, boy, I made a huge mistake here. And I shouldn't. And the grass is not always greener.
Yeah,
That's not a myth. That's a truth.
that is a truth. Definitely. Um, I want to ask you two questions, and I got to pick
Yeah.
which order I'm going to ask them in. The first, I think, is what advice do you give to the person who's in a position right now that they feel like they've outgrown and don't have any direction in, don't have any feel for what's next for them, what could be in this position? What advice do you have to that for that person to begin looking around and understanding um, what the next step might be for them?
I love this question so much. There's so many things people can do. So, people love to talk. Networking is such a buzzword today, and it means networking means something different to everyone. To some people, it means creating this tribe of 1,000 people, and you can go to every city and you can have a cocktail party with 10 people. But for me, I consider networking to find people in various places in your life. So I do like to volunteer because even if you're doing something that doesn't have anything to do with your industry, like right now, I volunteer at a food bank at a homeless shelter. Doesn't have anything to do, it's completely enrichment for me and working in my community. But you're always meeting really interesting people, the people that you volunteer with, the people that you're helping. They're immensely interesting and you can learn from everyone. But I'm also one of these people. I was on the board of a few apartment associations. I've done the NAA committee work. I've taught for NAA. I'm also a social media guy. I love social media. But I've used it to curate sort of a nice small group of people around me who I know will be in my life for the rest of my life. So networking to me doesn't mean finding 100 people. It means like that personal board of directors concept. I have a group of probably 5 to 10 people that I go to with everything that's happening in my life and ask for their opinion and counsel. So when someone feels like they're stuck, the first thing that they should do is they should tell someone. They should take it to, they should have some trusted people at their job if they're comfortable and say, like, is there anything else that I can volunteer for? Are there resource groups? Are there initiatives? Can I be that person that tests new technological initiatives?
Oh,
Because
love that.
That's stepping up in your company and saying, I want more.
Mhm.
And it's showing people around you that this person is invested in the company. There's nothing wrong with hedging your bets and going out and
Right.
talking to your personal network and saying, hey, I'm thinking about switching jobs, but I'm also maybe thinking about switching careers. So I'm also a big reader. So I think you should head to the library. I think you should look for, or head to Amazon. Some people never go to a library. Uh, it is 2025
And
after all.
Audible.
So
Listen to
yeah, hit
books.
Audible and just find, all you have to do is Google books about career options, figuring out what I want to do. There's thousands of books out there about that. Just dig into a book and start thinking about different things that you may be a fit for. I'll just take the easiest one, a leasing professional. If you're not happy in leasing, boy, you can go into training, you can go into marketing, you can go into sales for a different industry, you can go into customer success in another industry,
Right.
account management. There's so many other things you can do. You just may not know it yet.
Yeah, I can
But
remember being a leasing agent early on and thinking, oh man, the next step is assistant manager. Like, I
I don't want
admittedly would not make a
that.
good assistant manager.
Yeah. So if you're someone, I feel like you're talking about someone who might feel like they're in a little bit of a rut at the
Yeah.
moment. You just need to start exploring it. Share it with someone and then explore other options through your
Yeah.
relationships and your own
There are
curiosity.
also a
And
lot
again,
of
don't rush it.
really good,
Don't rush it. Don't rush
right.
it
Yes, I
is my
totally
biggest
agree.
piece of
Take your
advice.
time.
Yes, take your
Yep.
time. Take
There's
your
a lot
time.
of really good personal assessments out there too.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love the Working Genius model. It's like
So
a
do I.
$25 assessment.
That's one
Um,
of my favorite ones. I love them.
Me
Yes.
too. Me too. I loved it so much I went and got the facilitator certification on it. Now I love it even more, but it's really reasonably priced. It's $25 and it runs your personality assessment against the types of work that would bring you the most joy.
Yes.
And it's really enlightening because you start to learn like the kinds of work throughout the day that draw energy down for you and the types of work that build energy up. And that's a really good place to start too. If you're not sure which end of the industry is the best place for you, it's a great place to start and figure out, are you energized by people or are you energized by tasks and administrative work? Because those are two very different jobs.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a ton of those out there. And I think that's a good place to start too, just to get to know yourself a little bit more and be a little introspective on what brings me joy, what fills my, um, my interests and positioning yourself that way. But
Yeah.
I
Agreed.
also I want to pivot for a second and not just talk about the person that's in a role right now and maybe feeling stuck, but how about the one that's out looking for a job right now? How do you tackle that? How do you differentiate yourself? I'm not going to use the term personal brand because you and I had an earlier conversation where like personal brand to me sometimes feels like it's feeding to the LinkedIn algorithms. And I think
Yeah.
there's more authenticity out there than just feeding the algorithms. But
Yeah.
if you're out there looking for a job right now, Steve, what advice would you give that person?
I mean, I think that employers are looking for the same thing they've always looked for through the ages. Every company wants to hire someone who's enthusiastic and committed, but they also want to hire the consummate professional. And that's why referrals are so big.
Mhm.
Um, I do, like you, I do a lot of networking. I hear a lot of horror stories. People tend to be very inconsistent these days. You hire someone, they don't show up. You think you've got someone who's really engaged in the interview process and they ghost you. And so companies are a little bit gun shy. And so I do have people who come to me, and I'm always flattered when they do it. They come to me and they say, I am thinking about looking for a job. What kind of advice will you give me? And I'm going to give the same advice that's been true for the last 35 years, just with a little bit of a LinkedIn spin, a little bit of a technological spin. I mean, it always has to start with the resume. Your resume has to be good. And I have spent so many years hiring people, and it always boggles my mind the crappy resumes that people head out with. Your resume should be no graphics. Let's talk the AI talk for a second. So, the reality is, a lot of bigger companies, and it's not a bad thing, it's a great use of technology. A lot of big companies use artificial intelligence to
Mhm.
screen and read resumes. So, what you want to have is you don't want your picture on it anymore. You don't want a lot of like lines and decoration. You want only text because the different graphics really screw up the artificial intelligence models. But you want a really sharp resume that once someone does actually print it out, it looks like you put some effort into the design.
Yep.
It has to look like a very professional document. And I strongly believe in, an introductory section that states clearly who you are and what you want to be. So 3 or 4 bullet points that are very specific generalities about what you've done in your career and how you define yourself. And then I still believe in the chronological resume. So just go in reverse chronological order. But here's the kicker. I was recently working with someone and she had a to-do list. She had kept a list of all of her specific achievements at her last few jobs. And we were doing her resume together. And I absolutely loved it. I'm like, you've made it so easy. And this is what people want. So we took her
Yeah.
resume and remade it to very specific bullet points. Nobody wants to know that what's a great, what's a general example? I monitored incoming traffic. Everybody monitors incoming traffic.
Right.
What they want to see is I carefully tracked traffic by season and made sure that my sales methods, I was able to convert 40% of my leads, resulting in
Hmm.
10% increased occupancy and retention for the community.
Right. Note the
People want to know
outcomes
very
instead of just the task.
Exactly. They don't want it. You did the task, but what were the results? And then how did you make the company better? And that's why I said be patient and figure out how you can build some achievements at your company because
Mhm.
your next employer wants to know not only why you're looking for a new role, but how you made your past company better.
Yep.
I also realized that because of LinkedIn and artificial intelligence, most jobs these days will have 3 to 500 applicants in 2 days. And that's also a
Two
reflection of the
hours
market.
sometimes.
Yeah, a few hours. So my next piece of advice is you really have to do the full court press. And really all I mean by that is, yes, you should apply to jobs on LinkedIn, but if you're applying for a job at Cadence Marketing, if you're applying for a job with Janet, you should look at LinkedIn and you should see, do I have any connections that work
Hmm.
directly with Janet? And if you do, reach out to that person and say, hey, I'm so interested in this job. This is what I really appreciate about your company. Would you be willing to get my resume to the top of the pile? And then the next step is try to find someone to phone, make that real connection, voice on
Yep.
voice, call someone, have a conversation. Don't be afraid to do that because so many people are frustrated that they never get a call back. But
Yep.
it is almost impossible these days to really get someone's attention without another email, a phone call, and maybe a referral. Try to find someone to refer you from outside the company, someone who knows Janet and can make a call on your behalf because even that one step of giving a referral for someone, boy, does that make potential employers feel so much more comfortable with
Yes.
that
They're not
person.
interviewing blind. They know
Yes.
somebody who knows something about you.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And I
some of
think
it's
you're
old
right. I
fashioned.
think
The
talking
resume is
about
so important.
the
And then just make sure that
algorithms
you do the full
and
court press.
the AI tools that are being used in recruiting right now, that they're just kind of sniffing out the words in your resume that match the keywords in the search. And to make it
Yes.
past that piece, and then on to the next element of are you going to make the first round of interviews, which isn't with the hiring manager typically. It's with
No.
somebody that's checking a few boxes.
Yeah.
So it is really hard to get noticed. And I 100% agree with you that a lot of the best landings in your next job come from the networks that you've been building over time. So
Absolutely.
for those who are listening that might not be either in a position of currently looking for a job or in a position of feeling stuck in the one they're in, for those who are just enjoying their work right now, like
Mhm.
still really important to build your network and stay out
Absolutely.
there, not only for the sake of maybe helping along those who are in those two positions right now, but also to build the relationships that are going to help you navigate in the future. I mean, we started this conversation, Steve, you and I go back to probably probably a conference that we attended in like 1996 or 97. And
Yes.
you're not the only one that I met at that conference. I went by myself. I was the only person from Minneapolis that went. I didn't know anybody there, but it was a conference set up to meet people.
Yeah.
And I still have probably 30 relationships out in this industry, all of us still here, still cheering one another on, and would jump in at any moment and provide a recommendation if asked.
Yeah.
So the
So I
work
do want
you
to give,
plant, it's like the seeds you plant now are going to sow the roots for your future.
yeah. And I do want to give some people some encouragement about the branding piece. Branding is definitely a thing now, and it's definitely a buzzword. But you have to remember that everybody on social media, everybody on a platform like LinkedIn, they all have their own agenda. So not everybody has to have flashy video. Not everybody has to do a podcast. It's okay to be a lurker. It's okay to send nice messages to just a few people if that's someone that you think you can learn from and the connection makes sense. Don't feel bad if you're not out there creating all this splashy content because the people who are probably doing it to market their business. And if
Yeah.
you're just looking to advance in your career and follow people to learn and to meet them, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
I totally
there's
agree. And
there's a
just,
place for
keep some
everyone.
balance of when you can go to things in person, go to things in person. Because I'm always
Absolutely.
reminded when I go to industry events and I see all these people that I haven't seen in a while, they aren't necessarily the ones that I see daily on LinkedIn. Not everybody has time to be out on LinkedIn all day long every day. And
Correct.
sometimes I have to remind myself of that those people that might be my next client actually probably aren't on LinkedIn. They're busy. They've
Yeah,
got
exactly.
whole other set of, they're on Slack channel with their current teammates.
Yep,
So you do kind of need to be a little well-rounded and be all the places.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. I hope that we've built some groundwork for people listening to whatever place you're at in your career, some ideas on continuing to work towards creating a really solid path for the future. But Steve, I always ask my guests one last question. And I'm so excited to ask you this, but because it's called Optimized, I always like to finish with the question, how do you personally optimize in your daily life to try to seek just 1% better every day?
Well, in typical Steve fashion, I have two answers.
Okay, I'll take two.
I mean, the first one is I'm a bookworm. I'm probably one of the last people when I move to a new city. The first thing I do is get my library card because I and I just think that people who read are just always challenging their brain and just always trying to discover new things. So I am definitely always reading two or three books at any given time, and they're not all business books. They're a little bit of everything: business, fiction, history, politics, religion, all of it. So I'm a huge reader, and that definitely makes me a better person. It really challenges my brain. And the second one is I'm super grounded in my routines. I am one of those people who I have the same morning routine. I do the same thing to launch myself into the day because I think that it's so important to have a slow morning
Hmm.
doing the same things. And I'll just share. I read right. I get up, grab a cup of coffee, and I read right away. And then I go out for a run. So as soon as I get into my work, I have fed myself first. And I think that's so important to do something for yourself first
Hmm.
because work takes so much energy. And if you do happen to have a late day at the office and you're exhausted, you will not feel bitter because you started the morning doing something for yourself first. So I would say those are the two things. I read all the time and I really respect like my morning routine and how I launch my day.
That's great. I
That's
think
how
that
I
is the sign
optimize.
of a runner too, because I think as runners, we tend to get into our routines because you learn that running isn't just about the physical performance, it's very much about the mental performance too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it kind of sets your day up for the rest of the decisions you're going to make when you get out and you get that fresh air and you have a little bit of movement in your day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Those are
Yeah.
great answers. I love it. I'd love to call myself a bookworm too, but I don't always I'm I'm not great at finishing books. I'm really great at starting them.
That's
And
interesting.
I get super excited about books. I buy them and then I start reading them and then I tend to end up downloading them on Audible and listening to them.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing
I
wrong with
find
that.
like I want to read them, but I don't actually have the time to sit still long enough. So it ends up evolving into a drive or a
Yeah,
walk.
yeah, yeah. I think that's my podcast side. I'm also a little bit of a podcast addict.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's good too. Feeds your brain.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
thank you
this
so
was
much for
fun.
joining me
Thank you.
today. I
This was
I love
great.
this conversation.
Me too.
Listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, comment on um, the podcast platform of your choice. And thank you to the Multifamily Media Network for hosting this and allowing us to have these conversations.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, of course. Please do.
I'm always happy to help. I love having more LinkedIn followers or more LinkedIn connections. And if anyone has questions or does need a little bit of a tip or help with job search or something else, I'm always happy to help.
What is your LinkedIn profile so listeners can find you?
It's really fancy. It's Steve Matre.
Matre. Yes.
It is my name. So yeah, I'm just always happy to help. I really enjoy giving little tips of advice and helping people on their way. So
I love that about you. Listeners, please take him up on this. He's very good at it.
Well,
and if you have heard this and you are thinking of somebody who should be listening to it, please share it. We always appreciate that too. Yeah. Steve, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Happy spring.
Look forward to future conversations with you.
Me too. Hope to see you soon.
You too.
See you, Janet.
Thank you for taking the time today for this session. I hope you found a bit of inspiration and wisdom to optimize your performance. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. And remember, this podcast is proudly brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, your trusted source for stories, trends, and insights in multifamily living. If you're a marketing influencer, be sure to check out Cadence Marketing Solutions at cadencems.com. We've made it our mission to support marketers and lead you to the voices, resources, and tools that impact your success in this fast-paced industry.